My story with the Surface Duo began back in 2012. I was just a young college student that had just upgraded to the Surface RT, and I started really caring about the products that I used. And so I bought a Windows phone, a Nokia Lumia 822. It was junk, but it was so different from any other mobile experience that I'd ever used that I loved it. And with Microsoft's purchase of Nokia's mobile division in 2013, I was avidly following any news and rumors that the fabled Surface phone would soon be a reality. But reality struck, Windows Phone slowly died out, and I moved on to bigger and droidier things. Rumors continued throughout the years, and I would just shrug them off as more fans like me with unfounded hope. And then the Duo arrived, and I was hesitant. Like trying to feed a wild animal, Microsoft couldn't convince me that this was not a trap, especially with the announcement being a year before the actual release of the phone. But out of curiosity, I gave it a try, and I was burnt. The Surface Duo didn't have any of the magic that I had experienced with the Surface RT. It was a broken mess of a phone. And then the release of the Surface Duo 2 only gave me marginally more confidence that Microsoft was truly in it for the long haul. But now, with the Surface Duo 2 in hand, I can confidently say that Microsoft has something real on their hands, as long as they don't screw it up. This is an OISO, and this is the Microsoft Surface Duo 2 review. Now, when I reviewed the original Surface Duo, I split the video into two parts. First as a phone, and then as something more. I don't think this is really applicable to the Surface Duo 2 though. If you're looking into the Surface Duo 2, you're probably more concerned with the something more. Yes, it fulfills most of the qualifications of a normal phone. It won't compete directly with the Galaxy S22 line in that aspect, but it's okay. But the Duo was built to be different, and that all starts with the design. The general design formula for the Surface Duo 2 hasn't changed too much. Glossy glass, astoundingly thin, and a very impressive hinge. Now, what's different though is a new color, which shows fingerprints, and a refined design that feels a little bit more complete. The best example that I can give here is the frame of the phone, which feels less sharp and actually keeps the back glass panel in place, unlike the first Surface Duo. Tolerances aren't completely locked in though, because the two panels on my device don't really line up perfectly. I would have loved to see Microsoft switch to a metal design to mirror their Surface tablets, which would have been more robust and less fingerprinty. The Surface Pen charging case that I have here is great, but it actually only covers one side of the device. I will note that I've had a lot more luck with the fingerprint sensor on this device than the Surface Duo, and it's more reliable than the first generation. One big design change that Microsoft made was this: the massive camera bump to rival others on the market. Microsoft's reasoning for this was simple. Due to physics, there was not enough internal space to fit a competent camera setup without a camera bump. Now, I'm no engineer, though I act like one sometimes, but I would have been fine with two camera lenses here and would be fine with a couple more millimeters of thickness in the whole device. Put the cameras beneath the massive upper bezel so that there's less depth taken up by the display. And frankly, I don't need the Galaxy S22 Ultra levels of camera here. I instead maybe need Pixel 5a level cameras. The Surface Duo 2 doesn't even seem to deliver at that level. But the fact that this phone folds open with this massive gap makes handling an already awkwardly shaped device even more awkward. The pen charging on the back doesn't help it at all. This was even less of a one-handed phone than the Z Fold 3 when folded closed, which makes me wonder if a less wide device would be better. Unlike the Z Fold 3, I tended to fold this phone outwards to put it in my pocket, and while that might seem counterintuitive, the intention was to lower the effort it took to get to the displays. In terms of quality, these screens aren't the top of the line. Mine in particular had a bit of different colors between the two panels, and that didn't really bother me too much, but the outer visibility here is actually really lacking, the outside visibility, and it pales in comparison to most other modern flagships. But these are fantastic displays that give you a massive canvas to work with. Because of the curved edges of the Duo 2, it appears like the displays are actually closer together than before, which means watching content spanned across both displays was actually a lot more enjoyable. And the speakers are vastly improved from the Surface Duo 1 as well. Maybe the content that I watch has changed since the Duo 1, or I care less about seeing everything, but I wasn't nearly as bothered by the gap-hiding content as before, and I was appreciative of basically having a tablet that I could carry around everywhere. One additional benefit that I saw with this over the Z Fold 3 is that it has a natural stand to prop it up, whether it be actually folding it a bit to stand up like this, or just using one screen and folding it like this. This made it for a better watching experience for me. And that, along with more visible displays without distortion, made this actually my preferred, content watching device around the house. I always thought of the Z Fold 3 as higher tech because of the folding display, but that doesn't automatically make it better. Now, if you like watching content like this on any screen, be sure to get subscribed because I finally got the Surface Laptop Studio in, and it's the single most revolutionary Surface that I've used since the Surface Book that it replaces. That video is coming very soon. Now, had the photos coming from the Surface Duo 2 been a little bit more consistent, then I probably would have given it a little bit more slack for its massive camera bump. But unfortunately, I had it in one pocket with a OnePlus 9 from last year in the other pocket, and was consistently getting better photos from the OnePlus 9, be it night mode or portrait mode shots or most daily shots. This was a big disappointment for me. Now, one upside of the Surface Duo 2 was that I was able to use its hinge as a sort of kickstand or a tripod to set it up and take photos remotely. But that was a small positive in what was a generally poor camera experience. This is an example of the video experience. You can make your own decisions. Now, like the Z Fold 3, there is an optional stylus in the form of the Surface Slim Pen, which is my favorite stylus for any device. Granted, the experience on the Surface Duo 2 isn't nearly as robust as the experience you'd get on S Pen supported devices from Samsung, meaning that you don't have the same air gesture features or the same sort of play pause compatibility. You're pretty limited here to these two buttons having a couple features on the Surface Duo 2. The actual writing experience is pretty good, but I've never found that I can easily use both canvases at the same time and instead opt for one. Thankfully, I don't have the same problem with the Z Fold 3 where it vibrates on a surface that I'm writing on, but I would generally prefer using this on a tablet rather than on this device. I'm not a drawer or an artist in general, so the only real use that I have for it is practicing my Chinese characters, which is a nice to have. It's also nice to be able to quickly charge it on the back of the also not included charging case from Microsoft. I would have preferred if Microsoft had included the accessory by default or just baked the functionality of the accessory into the Surface Duo 2 in the magnets and the charging feature. But for a additional 60 or 70 bucks, this is a relatively good deal. If this is the specific plan for you and you want to have the experience of writing with a stylus on your device. Now, where the Surface Duo really sets itself apart is in the software. My Duo 1 review, I mentioned that fixing the bugs and making the Duo faster wouldn't be enough to make me want to use it. But the Duo 2 has actually proven me wrong. The Duo 2 performs like any modern phone should. Apps open more quickly, and it feels so much better to just throw apps between the two screens or span an app across both. I will say that there are some parts of the software experience that I still need to get used to, like how I can't swipe between apps when in single screen mode, or the vertical app switching menu actually just kind of feels off to me. Now finally I started to understand why I wanted two screens at once though. Keeping Spotify open while I checked my emails, or keeping YouTube open while I browse Twitter, or having email links open in the browser without having to leave the email app, all lent to an incredibly organized experience. Now, for a little bit of background on me, I have a pretty short attention span, and so if I get distracted by something, I will go down a rabbit hole and completely forget what I was originally trying to do in the first place. This happens every single time I unlock my phone. But the Surface Duo 2 actually helps me avoid that. I can always keep my productive work over on one screen, and as a constant reminder that I need to get back to it. This prevents me from getting stuck in 2 hours straight of TikTok, and it prevents me from ghosting my friends in texts. This is a big deal, and it completely changed the way that I use my phone. It's not that the Z Fold 3 can't do this. It's just that the single screen doesn't really lend itself to open multiple apps at once. Samsung doesn't force you to split the screen real estate the same way that Microsoft does. This gives me faith that the Surface Duo line actually has a purpose. But now I'd love to say that this experience came without problems, but the Duo 2 was the second most buggy phone that I've ever used in my life. You might be able to guess what the first one was. I had hoped that after 6 months after its launch, software updates would have been able to fix most of the issues. And maybe that is the case, but my problems range from small nags to rendering the phone completely unusable. There's just a small sampling. First, the notification bar frequently didn't come down when swiped. Second, the keyboard would randomly appear on the wrong display, or worse, not show up at all. Scrolling sometimes would be very fast and sometimes staggered and slow. And the rotation often doesn't work. The rotation lock often turns itself on without me trying. Now, right after I got it, I dropped my primary SIM card in the Surface Duo 2, I brought it to work, and then I felt it vibrate in my pocket. Pulling it out to check for a notification, I realized that the phone had shut down and restarted itself. Weird. Then I went about my morning, I was grabbing some water, and it shut down again. This would happen quite regularly. I'd be listening to music, and then my Bluetooth earbuds would just make the disconnection tone, the boo-doo-doo, and I'd pull out the phone, and it would be frozen for a second before shutting down completely. Now, this would happen maybe 10 or 15 times a day, if not more frequently. Basically, anytime I'd walk around. Now, some transparency, my Surface Duo 2 has a broken glass back panel. Keep that in mind. I reached out to Microsoft, I told them I was experiencing this problem, and they asked me to factory reset the phone. But it then kept happening. And so then they proposed actually a fix. They asked if any physical damage was done to the device, which I confirmed, and they said the phone was out of warranty and they would charge $700 for the replacement. Now, personally, I felt that it seemed like a software problem, but they told me since it didn't go away when I factory reset the phone, that it was probably hardware. Now, let's give Microsoft this benefit of a doubt here. The battery on this phone is glued to the back glass panel, and the whole phone is very thin, so maybe when the phone is heated up or under too much pressure, then maybe that's what was causing the phone to shut down. Maybe it was, in fact, a hardware issue. One of the major reasons why I thought this might be related to the battery is this chart right here, which is the most confusing battery life chart that I've ever seen. These crashes seem to be associated with these gaps in the battery life chart, where 10 or 20% of the battery just goes away for whatever reason. I've never seen this before, but in general, even when the Surface Duo was working properly, I was getting around 5 hours of screen on time, which is not that great for a modern flagship. This was a conundrum. I didn't want to spend $700 for a replacement back panel, not knowing whether the replacement would solve my problem. So I put my money where my mouth is, and I went and bought another Surface Duo 2, this time directly from Microsoft, brand new, for $1,500. Only a week before it had dropped to $1,000 on Amazon. I wanted to give Microsoft the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were correct in saying that this was in fact a hardware issue and not a software or firmware bug. So I dropped my SIM card in it, reveled at the new glossy glass finish without any sort of skin or case on it, and I brought it into work. And literally minutes within walking into the office, the phone crashed once again. For some reason, it continued to crash. This was notably only when I specifically was connected to Wi-Fi. So when I disconnected from Wi-Fi, it tended to happen less often, but unfortunately, I don't have a cellular plan with unlimited data, so I kind of need to connect to Wi-Fi if I want to stream music or download YouTube videos or anything along those lines. It seems really inconvenient for me to switch to a fully unlimited cell plan just for the sake of using one phone that I'm interested in. And so I reached back out to Microsoft. Without even asking me any sort of diagnostics, they said they would replace my brand new Surface Duo 2. Great, but wait a second. If you look at the fine print on the website, they say that they would replace the Surface Duo 2 with a refurbished device. So a brand new phone that I bought only a couple days ago, they would replace it with a phone that probably had either a screen or a back glass or a battery replacement, which just feels like I'm trading down quite a bit. Why not just return the phone and then buy a new one for $1,000? This is standard practice for a lot of return programs where they send you a refurbished device rather than a new one. And I think that makes sense 6 months into its warranty, but 2 days is a little bit concerning. All that being said, I returned the new Surface Duo because frankly it wasn't worth the $1,500 I spent for it, especially if it's got all the same software bugs as my broken one. So keeping my Surface Duo 2 with the broken glass back, that is the solution here. Let's talk for a second about repairs. The $700 cost that Microsoft quoted me was their full out-of-warranty pricing for a full replacement device. It doesn't matter if the lock button was a little bit rattly, or I had a few scratches on the device, or I ran the Surface Duo 2 over with my truck. In any of those cases, it was a $700 charge. Now, if I broke my Galaxy S22 Ultra's back glass, Best Buy would charge me $100 to replace it. A replacement panel on eBay would cost me about $15.85. That's granted not an original, but an OEM version would probably cost around twice that. As far as I can see, no third-party sites offer pricing on the Surface Duo 2 repairs. And I searched for a long time to try and find a replacement back glass panel myself, and I failed to do so. Now, Microsoft has announced recently that they are actively working to make parts and equipment available to repair their devices in partnership with iFixit. That's only for Surface computers though, and it mentions nothing in the text about the Surface Duo 2. Needless to say, as always, there's a downside to purchasing a niche, bleeding-edge piece of technology that doesn't have the massive support structure that Apple and Samsung do. All that being said, I still have a lot of hope for the Surface Duo line, more so than at the end of my Surface Duo 1 review. I see a future where a dual-screen device is a thing, and Microsoft is already the master of multitasking for laptops and desktops, so it only makes sense for them to shrink it to a pocket-size experience. I would love to see Microsoft put their full force behind the Duo and really make it a portable computing champion, maybe even bringing back Continuum for the desktop experience on the go. Do I recommend the Surface Duo 2 though? If you are an enthusiast and a fan, then the Duo 2 will offer an experience unlike any other phone on the market. I would greatly recommend at least trying it out to see if it fits your workflow the same way that it has mine. The Duo 2 though still suffers some of the same problems that I've had with the Fold, in that you're sacrificing a good phone experience for something more, but personally, I will always have a second phone in my other pocket to be able to quickly respond to text or take better pictures. But the Duo 2, for the near future, will be my primary computing device. Thank you for watching InnoISO. I hope you like this deep dive review of the Microsoft Surface Duo 2. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you do. Like the video and get subscribed if you want to see more videos just like this, and my review of the Microsoft Surface Studio, as well as other Surface-focused videos. Check out my Surface playlist if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Oh, and a little postscript for folks. For those that have been watching my videos for a while, you might have noticed this in the background of some of my videos. If you ever wondered what this was, it's actually a Microsoft Continuum dock for the Lumia 950 and Lumia 950 XL. Since it had stopped working a couple years ago, it worked as a regular docking station, but unfortunately, I think it got some water damage or something. So instead, I took it apart just to see what the internals looked like, and it is actually one of my coolest, like one of my favorite little pieces of technology that I've used. It's built like a brick house, and it's very, very dense and robust with the metal frame. But it's just a really cool piece of technology that I think will have a place in my own personal history of devices. That was just a little postscript for those who stuck around for this long. Thank you for watching. See ya.